On August 12, 2021, the heavy heat of the Utah desert was interrupted by the flashing blue and red lights of a Moab police cruiser. The officer approached a white 2012 Ford Transit van and asked the young woman inside a question that should have changed everything. "Are you okay?" Gabby Petito, just 22 years old, smiled through a mask of tears. She hyperventilated, apologized for her OCD, and insisted she was fine. She was living the dream of a generation, a cross-country van life journey with her fiancé, Brian Laundrie. To the thousands of strangers following her on Instagram and YouTube, Gabby was the picture of nomadic bliss: golden hair, wide smiles, and breathtaking views of the American West. But as she sat in the back of that police car, the reality was a suffocating nightmare of isolation and control. We now know that the body cam footage from that afternoon wasn't just a routine domestic call. It was a final, public cry for help that the system failed to hear. While the officers laughed with Brian and treated him like a gentleman dealing with a hysterical woman, Gabby was already living on borrowed time. She had less than 3 weeks to live. Fast forward to September 1st. That same white van pulled into a quiet driveway in Northport, Florida. Brian Laundrie was in the driver's seat, alone. He didn't call the police. He didn't call Gabby's mother, Nicole Schmidt. He didn't even mention her name. Instead, he and his parents, Chris and Roberta, hired a high-powered defense attorney and retreated into a wall of silence. While the world was just starting to ask where Gabby was, Brian was already planning his final act. What happened between that police stop in Moab and the driveway in Florida is a story of digital deception, forensic puzzles, and a timeline that suggests the Laundrie family knew the truth long before the first 911 call was ever made. Today, we are meticulously dissecting the timeline that captivated the world, a trail of digital breadcrumbs that masked a cold-blooded murder. But pay close attention to a specific text message sent from Gabby's phone on August 27th, famously known as the Stan text. For weeks, it was viewed as a mystery. Now, it stands as the smoking gun, a digital footprint of a killer trying to buy time while a body lay in the dirt. If you want to stay updated as we uncover the dark truths behind more of the world's most haunting cases, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications right now. We will get to the chilling discovery of Gabby's final resting place and the notebook confession that followed in a moment. But to understand the end, we have to look at the beginning, the cracks in the perfect couple that the Instagram filters couldn't hide. Gabby Petito and Brian Laundrie met at Bayport Blue Point High School in New York. They were high school sweethearts who shared a love for art, nature, and the idea of a life outside the 9-to-5 grind. In 2019, Gabby moved into Brian's parents' home in Northport, Florida. Friends of the couple have since come forward to describe a relationship that was far from the peace and love aesthetic they projected. Brian was reportedly controlling and manipulative, often taking Gabby's ID or phone to prevent her from leaving during arguments. In July 2021, they set off on their 4-month journey. The plan was simple: visit every major national park in the West, document it for Gabby's burgeoning YouTube channel, Nomadic Static, and live out of the van they had renovated themselves. But the freedom of the road turned out to be a cage. One of the most overlooked details in this case happened on August 17th, just 5 days after the Moab police stop. Brian Laundrie suddenly flew from Salt Lake City back to Florida. His reason? To empty a storage unit. He left Gabby alone in a Fairfield Inn & Suites for 6 days. Ask yourself, why would a couple on a limited budget dream road trip pay for a round-trip flight and a hotel stay just to move a storage unit? Investigators now believe this was a major breaking point. Some suggest he was seeking advice from his parents. Others believe he was testing how Gabby would react to being abandoned. When he returned on August 23rd, the reunion was anything but happy. On August 27th, the day Gabby is believed to have died, witnesses at a restaurant in Jackson Hole called Mary Piglet's saw the couple one last time. This wasn't a romantic dinner. Witnesses described Brian as menacing and aggressive toward the waitstaff over a disagreement about the bill. He reportedly walked in and out of the restaurant 4 times, continuing to argue with the manager. Gabby, meanwhile, was seen crying and apologizing profusely for Brian's behavior. This was the last time Gabby Petito was ever seen alive in public. Hours later, the stand text was sent. At 12:42 p.m. on August 27th, Gabby's mother received a text from Gabby's phone. It read, "Can you help Stan? I just keep getting his voicemails and missed calls." Stan was Gabby's grandfather. Crucially, her mother noted that Gabby never called him Stan. To her, he was Grandpa. This wasn't an accidental typo. Investigators believe Brian was already in possession of her phone. He was sending messages to her family to make it appear that she was still alive and moving toward their next destination. By August 30th, another text was sent. No service in Yosemite. It was a master class in deception. Brian was driving the van 2,300 miles back to Florida, using Gabby's phone to ghostwrite her final days. He even used her debit card at gas stations across the country, a move the FBI would later use to issue an arrest warrant. But he wasn't just hiding from the law. He was hiding from a grieving family who was texting his phone, begging for answers, while he sat in silence. When Brian arrived in Florida on September 1st, he didn't just stay quiet, he vanished into a routine of chilling normalcy. Records show that on September 6th, the Laundrie family went on a camping trip to Fort DeSoto Park. Think about that. While Gabby's parents were calling the Northport police, while the search was beginning in Wyoming, Brian was sitting around a campfire with his mother and father, just 75 miles away. The Laundrie's lawyer would later claim they didn't know anything was wrong. But why hire a lawyer before a missing persons report is even filed? Why cancel a camping reservation for 2 and change it to 3? On September 11th, the official missing person report was filed by Gabby's family in New York. When Northport police arrived at the Laundrie home, they were handed a business card for an attorney and told to leave. The clock was ticking, and the man with all the answers had just gone for a hike into the 25,000-acre Carlton Reserve. On September 19th, the search ended in the Spread Creek scattered camping area in Wyoming. When investigators found the remains, the autopsy revealed a cause of death that shifted the narrative forever: manual strangulation and blunt force trauma to the head and neck. Gabby hadn't been lost, she had been silenced. The medical examiner estimated she had been dead for 3 to 4 weeks, meaning she was likely killed shortly after that final sighting at the restaurant. But while the FBI was tracking the white van, they weren't just finding clues about Gabby. They were uncovering a trail of bodies across the United States. During the search for Gabby, the remains of at least 9 other people were discovered. This included Robert Lowry, a 6-year-old father, whose body was found just miles from Gabby's after a tip from a searcher who saw him on the trail. It also highlighted the unsolved double homicide of Kylan Schulte and Crystal Turner, a newlywed couple in Moab who were found shot to death in the mountains just days after Gabby and Brian's police encounter. Kylan had worked at the very cooperative where Gabby and Brian were seen fighting. The coincidences are staggering, and they point to a much larger, darker reality of the American wilderness. The story eventually shifted to the Florida swamp, where Brian's skeletal remains were found in October. Beside him was a waterproof notebook. In it, he wrote, "I ended her life. I thought it was merciful, that it is what she wanted, but I see now all the mistakes I made." He claimed Gabby had fallen in a creek and was shaking with cold and in extreme pain, and that he killed her to end her suffering. But the forensic evidence tells a different story, one of a struggle, a violent manual strangulation, and a final, cold-blooded decision to leave her in the dirt. There was no evidence of the mercy he described, only the evidence of a man who chose to hide his tracks, use her money to get home, and go camping with his parents, while her family begged for the truth.